Well, it's been some time since I had the opportunity of being invited to Mexico. We all know what the reasons for that difficulty are. But on this occasion, as I say again, I'm happy for this opportunity. I'll just take up several subjects which I think of both practical importance for a worldview on our situation in this part of the world, and also an indication of what the future could be. First of all, we are now in a breakdown crisis, an economic breakdown crisis among other features, as well as a social breakdown crisis throughout the entirety of the transatlantic system. The system on the Trans-Pacific region, leading toward Asia and so forth, is somewhat better. Of course, Africa is a terrible situation on both sides of the waters. But what we are on is a present breakdown crisis, a physical economic as well as financial economic breakdown crisis of most of the planet, especially among the transatlantic set of nations. It's a little less bad on the Asian side, apart from what's going on in the so-called Near East. So the question is, can civilizations survive what is now a present breakdown crisis and something worse? We're now hovering on the edge of a general thermonuclear war. That is, the British monarchy and its confederates, including the current President of the United States, are committed presently to threatening to launch a thermonuclear war against Russia, China, and other nations. And at a certain point, if they do not succeed in intimidating Russia, China, and other nations into a treaty of intimidation, then the intention is to force the United States, now under the ultimate control of Barack Obama, to allow Barack Obama, on behalf of the British, to unleash the military capability, the thermonuclear weapons capability, largely based in the Pacific, to attempt to utterly obliterate nations of Asia, such as Russia, China, and so forth. That's what's in process. Our problem is, first of all, to stop this thing, and there are many leading people in the military and related functions inside the United States who have done much already to try to prevent such a horror from being unleashed. Because a thermonuclear war of the type which the British leadership, with control over President Obama, would unleash, would probably bring an extinction threat to the entire planet. Because under these circumstances, when thermonuclear weapons are introduced into the equation of statecraft, then you are on the verge of extinction, because you have one set of powers, which is the attacking power, in this case Britain and the United States under Obama. And on the other side you have the Russia and China and so forth, which are also thermonuclear powers, which would mean in logic that there would be a secret, so-called, thermonuclear launch against Russia, China, and so forth from the United States, across the Pacific, and from other sources. The minute that liftoff is detected as coming from submarines and so forth, Russia and China are forced to respond immediately with a maximum thrust of thermonuclear weapons. And you can guess what that is. So now we have a situation where a few people in Russia, in China, some other countries, and in some of our people in the United States are blocking and have successfully blocked so far a war which is supposed to begin last year, in the late months of last year. And that's what we're now united, those of us who understand this and who are of some consequence and some knowledge, are determined to prevent such a horror as this from occurring. It is possible. I fear that under the Obama administration, which is itself now in trouble, that the launch would be something that mankind might not survive. If it would survive, it would be survival at a terrible, terrible price throughout the planet as a whole. So we've now come to the point that reform is not something you propose because it would be a good idea. We've come to the point that reform of a very serious kind, involving cooperation among many nations, and of course including the United States and Mexico, the two countries which we're dealing with right here. These countries must be protected, and the life of these nations must be assured. It's my hope, and it's a realistic hope, that we might avert this problem. But on the other side, we have, apart from the general breakdown crisis, an economic breakdown crisis, a physical economic breakdown crisis, as a financial breakdown crisis. Europe is about to collapse. It's about to disintegrate, Western and continental Europe and Central. It's on the process of disintegration. But all these problems are soluble. Let me indicate what is typical and relevant. First of all, we know that the fate of Mexico is largely determined by what happens inside the United States and from the opposite side from certain forces in Europe. What we can do on the economic side is we have the ability to, despite the Great Depression, which is throughout the transatlantic region, despite the great dope traffic, which is destroying civilization throughout the entire transatlantic system, we have programs which we're ready to put into effect right now. And my associates and I are a significant factor in this policy making. And our intention is, for example, one case. All of you who are senior in terms of Mexico's history know that there was once a commitment, as long as President John F. Kennedy was alive, and somewhat later, a commitment to launch a project called NOAPA. This would take the entire water management system of Canada, the United States, and northern Mexico, and bring them together under a great water management system, which obviously would solve a great problem, as in the northern part of Mexico, where the need for the development of a water system is not only possible, but feasible. And the establishment of NOAPA, which I'm committed to having launched now, would be a key to that solution. Eliminate the drug problem, launch projects such as NOAPA as cooperative projects on the northern part of the Americas, and the extension of that into cooperation with other regions of the world. And we have the essential prototype of a basis for going now to the kind of recovery for which I hoped and worked for back many years ago in Mexico. So therefore we have a terrible situation, and we cannot just talk about nice things, because there are terrible things in reality coming down upon us. And therefore we have to take those things into account seriously without trying to evade them, because there are horrors that can mean the extinction of civilization, if not of mankind. We also have something to supplement that. We're on the verge in the development of technology that we have the potentiality now of realizing a project which is already defined. It is possible in some time within the reasonable future of a generation or two. It is possible within that time frame to have launched a method of transport of human beings from the moon to the planet Mars, and to complete that voyage within 1 week through the use of thermonuclear fusion as a power drive. This is the old Einstein dream of being in control of space and time. This is now becoming feasible. It's within reach if the effort is made to mobilize those forces. Such a mobilization would change the entire world. We would finally go into what has been postponed for a long time, the possibility of development of advanced technology which had existed at the beginning of the last century, before World War I. That potentiality, that scientific potentiality, has now progressed slightly as potentiality. We're now talking in science, We're talking about space defense, because the planet Earth is being always threatened by an asteroid of sufficient size, which crashing into the northern part of the planet Earth could extinguish human life on Earth with just one blow. It is possible for us now to craft and develop means to protect mankind throughout this planet from such a danger. It's necessary to do that. And therefore the idea of the development of a system controlled by mankind, reaching from the moon to Mars, such a system is necessary, because with such a system we are capable of diverting asteroids which might hit Earth with great force and thus destroy the human species. We now have that prospect as a potentiality before us. We also have other potentialities in thermonuclear fusion, and going on to actually the utilization of matter-antimatter reaction, which is the new technology for the remainder of this century. So we have many hopes. The important thing to do is not merely to tell our people that we have such possibilities, but to make clear that these possibilities are practicable, and they are practicable. We have to demonstrate to people that they are practicable, because only a few scientists really understand this now so far. But that we, by taking the initial steps, like for example, the completion of NOAPA, which will probably take 30 years to complete. This would include all of northern Mexico, which is water deficient. And that whole area of Mexico would become then, as a byproduct of NOAPA and related projects, would now become a area of development beyond the dreams of most people in Mexico today. And that is the moral responsibility of the United States to cooperate with Mexico in the achievement of such developments. And that means cooperation with Canada. But it means more. It means extensive cooperation with the similar kinds of technologies throughout the Trans-Pacific region, going into all the countries on the other side of the Pacific Ocean and beyond. So these are the two great things to consider. The danger to humanity, which is increasing now, and the hope for humanity, which if we are successful in our effort, we will make possible, make real in the time to come. I would say on the question of timing, I'm fairly good at forecasting, but that is not predicting. Forecasting is a definition of the things that could happen in terms of what man's potentialities are if we put our arms to the wheel to make them come true. And that's what's needed. We need a new conception of cooperation. One very important thing that we in the United States, and particularly my part of the United States, are doing, we're now at a point where we are capable of defeating what is the great financial threat to civilization for most of the world, but especially the transatlantic region. Under the present economic system of the United States, Mexico, South America, and so forth, it is impossible for civilization to survive. It is necessary to make a fundamental change in the monetarist policy, from the monetarist policy which has brought us into this current mess. What is required for that specifically is the development of technologies such as that of NOAPA, but also we need to eliminate the cause of the crisis. The cause of the transatlantic crisis in particular is the present world monetarist system, the transatlantic monetarist system. Under the continuation of what is called the London and Wall Street system of economy, the situation of the people of the United States, of the entirety of the Atlantic region, is hopeless. But with a single action by the voters of the United States, under appropriate leadership, we can change all this by establishing what was the original U.S. constitutional provision, a credit system and elimination of monetary systems for a credit system. That measure would by itself enable the United States, even now, to launch a change in policy which would open the gates for a general revival of economy and of civilization, or civilized forms of life. So that's what we have before us. I know and love what Mexico's potential is. As people, older generations in Mexico know, I was devoted to this kind of change, not only because it was necessary to Mexico as a neighbor of the United States, because it was necessary for Mexico's role in terms of its participation in reshaping the entire system of the Americas. That all those potentialities still exist. There are new features which have been added to that. We can do now, with a slight change in the policy of the U.S. government, we can launch a reform which would free Mexico from the evils which have been subjected to in the past 2 generations. That's a possibility. We must work for it, because the only thing that can succeed is not merely optimism, but a commitment to actions which are the realization of optimism. All those technological problems and related problems can be addressed now. And therefore we must look at this situation not merely from the awfully ugly things, the grave threats that threaten mankind throughout this planet now. We must devote ourselves to a commitment to forcing these changes through. And it must be a sense of unity among sovereign nation states which work to bring this about. A unity among nation states for this cause. And the evils which have descended upon the people of the United States, and on Mexico in particular, these evils can be conquered. And we must commit ourselves to that end. Don't worry too much about what the chances are, because there's no alternative but to win. And the time has come. We've got to think in those terms. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to address people in Mexico after this long absence from Mexico by me, for various reasons that are well known. And I think that if we can bring ourselves together in terms of the leadership in Mexico as within the United States, that can be a great factor of optimism in making possible what is long awaited to be done. Thank you very much.